Welcome back to Red Devils TV, everyone. It's Wednesday evening, so yes, thank you for watching. We've got a special guest today, Tom, who's a young journalist who we've obviously brought onto the channel because we have quite a few questions. Obviously, we've had breaking news over the last 48 hours about the Qataris, about Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Mbappe, and Ten Hag. So there's a lot of updates that we can talk about. So I'm really grateful for Tom to join me this evening. Tom, do you just want to say hello?
Yeah, no worries, Dan, and yeah. Thanks for having me on your platform as always with people, and yeah, anybody who's watching live or in the community, everybody, guys, like, subscribe, share his channel, and let's get him on that road to 1K as he's wanted to do so. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Tom. Obviously, I really appreciate it. But anyway, yeah, so let's get right into it. We'll talk about the Qatar update. So, Tom, obviously, recently in breaking news, it was It was Monday night, like about midnight, and we received news that the Qataris are apparently it's going to be Qatari Day. All the Qatars are now leading the race for the sale of Manchester United. What is actually going on with the Qatar and everything?
In terms of what's going on, neither side has heard back from the Rain Group, and throughout the whole process, the way that it's worked is there's been 3 rounds of bidding processes, official bidding processes, and each group has had to follow a deadline to meet those processes essentially. And it's not just Sheikh Jassim with the Qataris and Sir Jim Ratcliffe. There is still the minority and investment groups who are prepared to buy a minority stake or provide financing and funding. So there is still other parties that are within the process. But from the Qatari side, the reports that were coming out surrounding the Sheikh Jassim was successful and certain things like that, it was coming based out of a news article from, based in Qatar anyway, Al Watan. And the editors and the reporters at the time had picked up upon certain leaks and rumours that were going around the European media, and they basically reported it because it was something to do with their own nation and country. It's not an assessment as to what they knew, it's just from what they'd seen and heard, and they wanted to report back on it because, as we know with Sheikh Jassim, he's one of their own. Like the same thing that would happen with Sir Jim Ratcliffe with the British media. It's clear as day between the two parties, but where we are right now is that the Glazer family had originally, the 3rd round of bids had been in, and everybody thought that was it. And at that point, privately, via the Rain Group, the proposal that Sir Jim Ratcliffe had put on the table for 50%, buy 4 siblings out, keep Joel and Avram Glazer in with 20% stake, and he gets the control of the Class B shares, which ultimately gives him more voting power than the Glazer family. From doing so via that was the Glazer family's agreement at the time. That's what they wanted to go with. They had made their mind up as a family. And from there, Sheikh Jassim had been told this via the Rain Group that, look, if you want to buy Manchester United, you need to bid again. You need to put another offering on the table that suffices the evaluation set by the Glazer family of £6 billion. He did bid again. He bid the fourth time. And via doing the 4th bid, he'd bidded direct via Rain, but also directly to the Glazer family. And from doing so, the communication line has been built between the Glazer family and the Qatari delegation. And talks have happened in the same way talks have happened with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. And the process, really, if I'm putting it bluntly, has been up in the air and it's been a circus. I'm not going to deny him saying that, because ultimately and overall, both parties now are essentially preferred bidders, if I'm going to be fronted about it, because both parties are negotiating terms on a deal. The only difference is one deal's to keep a percentage of some of them involved with the club and minority stakes, and a different fluctuation in price with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. And the other option is that Sheikh Jassim buys all 6 members out at a designated figure price. Hence, he's put in this 5th offer. And just to touch on it around the 5th offer, when the 5th offer went in, the news that myself and colleagues had heard around, one word that was coined as a phrase around that offer was, this is a premium offer. And the Glazer family really have had, I would have said, 2 to 3 weeks to have done a deal with Sir Jim Ratcliffe if they wanted to. He can't offer any more. Like, he's set terms, he's set a percentage, and he's offering a certain amount of money. That's it. The Qataris have more wiggle room, and from that point there, essentially, Sheikh Jassim put the final offer in and said, look, it's a take it or leave it. The offer will still stand, but I'm not going to communicate any longer. And we're not going to discuss finances unless my bid goes somewhere from there. And at this point in time now, the Glazer family have taken the 5th bid and they're looking over it and they're deciding whether they wanted to stick with their original decision, which was after the 3rd round of bids, Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his proposal, or be fully bought out by Sheikh Jassim. And the word premium, if they've been waiting, should we say, for this big offer, as people have been, having theories about, if they've been waiting for this big offer, it has arrived now. So really now, as Sheikh Jassim coined the words, you take my big offer now or you leave it. And at the end of the day, the Glazer family's decision is expected to be within, well, a lot of people are saying this week and over the check process. The problem is there isn't any set in stone deadlines. So I'm not going to come on your channel, Dan, or I'm not going to go on anybody else's and state that, oh, it's going to be Monday, it's going to be at 9 p.m. or 5:01 in the morning. It's not going to happen. The Glazer family don't set deadlines. And hence the process has taken as long as it has done because they don't set deadlines.
Yeah.
So that's where we are in terms of that.
Yeah, and for me, the way I look at it as a fan, it's like that Sheikh Jassim has been kind of, he's never really been the leading preferred bidder. Obviously, both the media have portrayed it as that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is the preferred bidder, the Qataris are the preferred bidder, but Sir Jim Ratcliffe's always been the kind of front runner of the whole process. And for me, looking at it, it seems that the Qataris have almost tried to get it for as cheap as possible for Manchester United, and then now they've realised, right, from what the reports are saying or from what they know from their side, that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is the leading one between the two, and his offer is more likely than theirs. So they've now, for this newest bid that they've set, I feel like they've just put the money down the table, like you've said, where they've said it's our last offer now, take it or leave it. Now I feel like this offer blows Sir Jim Ratcliffe's out the water, and then this is where the Glazers are now don't know what to do. But I feel like that for me as a fan, I don't care whether it's Sir Jim Ratcliffe or the Qataris. I just want 100% of the club sold. But with what the deals have been publicised and said that Sir Jim Ratcliffe wants 50% and will give the Glazers 20%. Then that's why I've always gone ahead of the Qataris, because they want the full 100%. And that's the way I've led towards the Qataris. It's not because of the massive money that they have or anything like that. It's because they're the preferred bidder that is 100%. So that's the way I look at it from a fan. So look, from your perspective, what would you say do you think that Sheikh Jassim's kind of been impatient and tried to get it for as cheap as possible, and now he's just put all the money down the table? What do you think on it?
Yeah, in terms of from I guess a Qatari motto is they don't go in for something if they don't end up winning it. That's one thing that I've always known in terms of Qatar. They bid for the World Cup, they won it. They wanted Paris Saint-Germain Football Club, they got it. They wanted Lionel Messi, Neymar, Mbappe. They wanted any player in the world. They end up getting the player. You've just seen recently with Chelsea with Ugarte from Sporting Lisbon. He was heavily, faced upon to go to Chelsea, and PSG and Qatar, backed by the state of Qatar, rolled up the sleeves and said, "No, he's our player," and they completely pushed Chelsea out of the conversation. So when they want something, they do end up getting it if they want it that much. And in terms of him as a person with Sheikh Jassim, ultimately over from what I know anyway, in terms of his offer, he's putting a straight cash offer in terms of the offer that he sets. It's one instalment, it's wired straight over. I get the keys to Manchester United, and I've got a separate pot of funds, which is believed to be $1 billion, which is £800 billion. When you equate that, then that's to go straight investment into the club from day dot as soon as he comes in. And from that reading, Sheikh Jassim has been very clear and outlined in terms of what he plans to do with the football club. I will clear the debt. I will invest in the infrastructure. I'll invest in the men's, women's, and youth teams. I'm not just being biased towards anything in terms of the culture of the football club. I want 100% of this club, and via doing so, I look at that and I think that's somebody who's got a plan and who's got a vision. So Jim Ratcliffe, on the other hand, I think he's realised, or I think a lot of people will know this anyway. Coming into the process, he didn't expect to have a sheikh from the Middle East to come in and if you like, blow him out of the water in terms of him trying to do a deal with the Glazer family, because he had a plan in mind when he met them in I think it was October time, just a month before they announced that they were selling a note, that they were prepared to look at alternatives in November. Upon that sort of time, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, I believe anyway, he looked at it and thought, well, I'm the only name that's really associated with trying to buy Manchester United at any point, and he has been for years. He's always been linked to trying to make a bid for the club. So really, I think he looked at that and he thought, I'm going to have a straight run at this. There's not going to be anybody who wants to pay £6 billion or it's, easy work. He's gone through that and then he's realised, oh, right, I'm up against, Sheikh Jassim, who, his father used to be the ex-prime minister and has, links to, the Qatari sovereign wealth fund, which is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. But that's just listing figures. Like, it's probably worth trillions if I'm being completely honest. But ultimately, I think he's looked at that and thought, I can't compete with these people financially. And if you can't compete with somebody financially, what do? You have to try and cut a deal, really. And that's what he's doing. And he's proposing to make it a deal where he comes in now and buy, say, 50% for, don't quote me on it because I don't know the official numbers, around £3 billion, for example. And then in maybe 3-4 years' time, he proposes to buy the other siblings out and use put on calls. But from news that broke today anyway regarding the Premier League in terms of how they are blocking leverage buyouts now in the modern day, where you can't use banks' money essentially to buy into a football club and then leverage the debt that you've used from the bank onto the actual football club when you acquire it. It's not legal anymore. So essentially, if the Glazer family wanted to do,
so I'm guessing, that's because of how the Glazers did it then.
Yeah, well, that was the.
I'm guessing that's because of how the Glazers did it then.
Yeah, that's how the Glazers did it. They took Malcolm Glazer, who was the father at the time, he took £700 million loan, bought Manchester United via debt, via JP Morgan, and the debt money that JP Morgan had leveraged, they had to leverage it somewhere, and they put it onto the business that they was using. And at the time, legally, you could do it. And then ever since, there's been the coin of the anti-Glazer clause, is what people call it. For example, when Chelsea was up for sale and investors who wanted to buy Chelsea, they can't use a leverage buyout to then buy Chelsea Football Club because at the time, the debts that Roman Abramovich had accumulated were on him personally. So instead of it being on the club in Manchester United's case with the Glazer family, that's how the difference in it equates. And when you have debt on a club, it affects your performance in terms of what you can do in the transfer market. It affects brand deals. It affects a lot of things, really. And if you unshackle Manchester United, which is the biggest commercial club, even with this debt, it's still the biggest commercial club in the Premier League. If you take that debt away from Manchester United, it's a completely different ballgame. Like, you think Manchester City are dominating the Premier League. Manchester United financially can attract any player in the world if they wanted to, if they were a debt-free football club. And it doesn't matter, like Kylian Mbappe, for example, is on the market right now. Man United could buy Kylian Mbappe if they wanted to, if they were a debt-free football club, for sustainable for years to come. But that's not the process that we live in right now. And in terms of saying what I said around Sir Jim Ratcliffe's offer, the legalities around it is what he's proposing legally. Well, it suits, in terms of business and finance, the Glazer family and Sir Jim. But because he's not buying the whole of them out in terms of the 69%, he then, to kind of face, he annoys the other 31% stockholders who own shares and stocks via the New York Stock Exchange, some of which are owned by massive hedge funds. They can legally and liably sue Sir Jim Ratcliffe because the valuation that he pays for 50% then doesn't give them an accurate reading as to what their shares are actually worth. Therefore, he's manipulated the market, for which you can't do legally by law when you trade stocks and shares. So essentially, the Sir Jim Ratcliffe offer has a lot of complications. As much as people say Sheikh Jassim's offer has a lot of complications, really, but ultimately, either way you look at it, one of them in Sir Jim Ratcliffe owns a football club already. Sheikh Jassim could be linked to one, as it's been reported anyway regarding PSG. But either way that you look, there's going to be a problem and it's going to take time. And the longer the process goes on, the longer the sale's going to drag on and take, because the Glazer family still haven't decided. You've still got the Premier League that you've got to go through the owners and directors test. You've still got to go through UEFA's financial and clarity laws. Like, there's so many different factors, even after the Glazers decide who they want. And really, that's why negotiating a deal with both of them, if I'm being honest, around the Glazer family, is probably the smartest thing they've ever done, really, in this whole process, because it speeds up the deal. It speeds up the needs that you don't need to negotiate terms. You know what you're signing for, and you know what you're going with, essentially.
Yeah. And like with you telling me about like that debt situation, I didn't know that was such a heavy leverage on Man United. I actually just thought that United, it was just down to the Glazers, and that's why we've always struggled attracting these big players. Obviously, we've had like recent players like Paul Pogba and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and these type of players, obviously Cristiano Ronaldo. But when it comes to recent megastars, you could say, but with the likes of Mbappe, if we were debt free, I didn't realize we could literally just snatch him up like that. But obviously, like, as we see with the reports and stuff, like City have earned more money in revenue this season than Man United. And I'm looking at that like, how is that even possible? United have way more fans probably in Spain, or they probably do have quite a bit of a global fan base, but it's not as extortionate, as massive as Manchester United is. So I didn't realise that the debt actually held such a heavy leverage. But Simon says that, how would you both feel that the Glazers still have a say after the takeover? So I'm guessing that for me, it's obviously that the only reason the Glazers would have a say is that if Sir Jim Ratcliffe was appointed as the new owner. Now, Tom, I'm not sure what football club you support.
No, I just support Manchester United, so we're in the same boat.
That's good then. Yeah, so, but yeah, I'm guessing that with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, that he would be the only one that has a say if the takeover was finalised. So I'm guessing with the Qataris or Sheikh Jassim, that the Glazers wouldn't have any say over that. And Simon also goes on to say that there's a lot of intrect stuff going on. These guys ain't stupid because the Glazers are vampires. It's one way to put them. I mean, that's a PG way of calling the Glazers. But for me, I'd say that, like Tom said, that this is probably the smartest process than what the Glazers have actually done for probably their entire time owning Manchester United, because they want a good payout, and probably the most difficult decision that they're making is that do we take straight up cash now for billions and billions of pounds, or do we take the gamble and take half the amount of money now, but then keep some of our shares, and hopefully that earns enough money over time, and then we can then earn more money over time. So I can understand why it's such a hard decision, because it's kind of like someone obviously offering to buy your house for the full price you've set or half of it, but then saying that they're going to renovate your house and they're going to sell it on in the future, and then you get a percentage once they've sold that house. That's probably the best way of actually explaining it. But Thomas early says that, which Man United player do you think is the longest in the shower? That's a very interesting question. I'd have to say, I'd probably say Wout Weghorst because of how massive he is, or Harry Maguire. I have to say probably a very tall player, but that's honestly a very interesting question, to be honest. Tom, what would you say about that question?
I'm probably going to say where that you're thinking, to be honest, but it's a weird question to think of and ask for.
That's probably the best question I've ever had on this channel. And then Sam said intricate. Sorry, that's fine, mate. But anyway, we'll move on to the next segment, and is Sir Jim Ratcliffe out the race? Now, we've kind of already covered this, but there was a recent report that I read yesterday that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has said that with all the investment he's received to buying Manchester United and all the loans he's taken out, that if he's unsuccessful buying the club, then he's going to invest all this into the French side that he currently owns in Nice. So, Tom, I don't know if you know anything about that, but that's what a report I read on Twitter it was from. So could you just clarify on that if you've heard anything similar?
Yeah, the report that you would have read is true, but the difference is he wouldn't just invest it all into Nice. He also owns another club, which is Lausanne in I think it's in Switzerland or Sweden. I can't remember where it is actually. He owns two clubs already. One of them, Nice being the most prolonged and known, because at the time when he actually bought Nice, it was actually the second best football club in France. Like he was buying in to compete with PSG, essentially. That's what the Nice fans were led to believe, and ever since then they've never been near second place ever since he's bought it.
Oh wow!
Look and read into that what you want. And Lausanne, the other team that I've just mentioned, he's had them relegated twice ever since he's owned them. I mean, it's not really a good ownership track record, if I'm being honest. But no, in terms of the report that you read around the finances, we know from the proposal he's put in place, he doesn't have the finances right now to buy the whole thing straight away. So the money that he's using to buy Manchester United or bid for it at the rate that he wants, if he doesn't get that sort of money, he can't pump 3 billion into Nicce, but he can bump, like, say, for example, he could loan 500 or he could loan 800 like Sheikh Jassim's doing to put into Manchester United over, say, 3-4 years. He'd use some of the money, but he wouldn't use all of it, essentially, is what the process around that would be. But as how business works and with how banks, get more money, interest payments at the moment are through the roof, especially in the US, which for Sir Jim Ratcliffe's offer of using loans and bonds, he's using them via JP Morgan. We've heard that before, as I said, with the Glazer family of a leveraged buyout. So they know what they're doing in terms of Manchester United. And he's also using Goldman Sachs. So the loans and bonds that he's using to engage it in terms of the offer that he wants, he would invest a small portion of the bidding pot that he's using now to put into Nicce, to put into Lausanne. And, you might, say that's an admission of failure and that he hasn't got the football club. But you could also argue in terms of saying that with the Nicce fans, in the same way that Manchester United fans want to know what's going on with their football club, they would say to him, well, where was this heavy investment, 3-4 years ago when you actually bought us? Where's this major money coming from now? Because ever since he went to Nicce, he said, we're going to invest heavily. We're going to put the right football structure in place. We're always going to be in the market for the best young talents and players in the world, and we're going to compete in the French league. That was his mantra, his motto of going to Nicce. Neither of which, if I'm being blunt and honest, he's ever done. Nice's transfer window last summer, the 3 high-profile players that I know anyway, who are a lot old-fashioned more in terms of the Premier League, Aaron Ramsey, was he on a free from Juventus, Kasper Schmeichel on a free from Leicester City, and Ross Barkley on a free from Aston Villa. That was their 3 marquee signings at Nicce Football Club last summer.
Wow.
That's what I think as an ownership model in terms of the Nicce fans, they are not going to be happy around. You've bought 3, if you like, players who are at the twilights of their career from the Premier League for nothing, essentially. But you're going to invest £800 million like that. Like Nicce fans, they're like Manchester United fans. They won't forgive and they won't forget. It's as simple as that motto around forgiving and you'll forget. It's not going to accumulate with Manchester United. Every United fan is going to know what he's done if it is him that they decide to go with. But in terms of your question around, is he still, is he out of the process? He's not, no. And the reason why he's not is the Glazer family decided they wanted to go with him. Whether they've used that as a tool to get Sheikh Jassim to bid more and things like that, you can make your own minds up and interpretations around that. But ultimately, the Glazer family were happy to take a bit of money now and keep a stake in the club for future development, because in 5-6 years' time, Manchester United is only going to grow. Man United will never it's never going to decrease in valuation. It's always going to grow. You're going to get more fans. If you do something with a stadium, that brings more money, etc. If you improve the team and you're successful, prize money, global awareness, you get the lot. You get the shebang, really. So the Glazer family looked at that option and they thought, well, we don't get the offer that we wanted from the Qataris. Right, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, we've got a backbone to fall on, really. But now via, say, as I say, a premium offer from Sheikh Jassim and the Qataris, if the Glazer family have been waiting for this big offer, it has arrived. It's here now. So, as Sheikh Jassim said, you take it or leave it. So Sir Jim Ratcliffe, as I said, as we've already spoken about, he doesn't have anything else left to give. This is it. He has a proposal. He knows he can't compete financially with Sheikh Jassim, so he's had to cut a proposal. And now his proposal is being scrutinised legally by the majority shareholders via New York Stock Exchange. It's going to be scrutinised by the Premier League because of the influence that they've done on leveraged and debt takeovers. And it's also going to be scrutinised because he can't add any more debt onto Manchester United anyway, because they were a leveraged buyout club in the first place. So really, he's got more problems than he has things going for him in terms of Sir Jim Ratcliffe. And he also, as you reiterated at the beginning, can get blown out the water by the Qataris. So really, in terms of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, I don't think he's sitting at home or laying in bed at night, thinking, I'll put my feet up. I've got a cup of tea next to me. It's all well and good, and it's done, because it isn't.
Yeah.
But it comes now. The Glazer family's motto around it comes to money. Now it doesn't come to money. It comes to what they want to do, and do they want to stay and potentially get more money in the long term, or do they all want out right now? And it's the best offer that they will get right now, and probably the best offer that they would have seen for 5 years in terms of past time. 5 years ago, they would have never got this offer. So 5 years ago now, getting this offer is ridiculous. And like you say, in terms of Sheikh Jassim, he's throwing everything that he's got at it now. And if they don't bite now, he'd pull away and they'll go elsewhere. So at the end of the day, if the Glazer family want a deal,
exactly,
to leave this football club with the money that they've been sort of quoting, whether it's the exact money or not, I don't know, because of NDA agreements, non-disclosure agreements, which hide the finances and the numbers around certain offers and proposals. But ultimately, this premium offer is here now for the Glazer family. So if they want it, take it and run with it, guys. That's all I'll say to them.
Just another question I wanted to ask you as well is that obviously you just mentioned that United's valuation is only going to increase over the years, but what about the actual equivalent and valuation of the dollar or the sterling? Because as we've seen with the likes of about 10 years ago, it was other kind of the dollars are kind of on bang on. I think it's every pound is now $1.10 or something. So do you think that might be another reason with the decrease of the dollars and stuff is why the Glazers are also tempted to sell as well?
You could look at it from that perspective, but you could also look at it as really over the years, they've always set up that they want to sell at some point, but they've never set a time where they actually want to sell. Whereas now, when they opened the process in November, the money was dwindling. They didn't have Champions League football, so the finances were stretched. They had all this debt, as I say, which haddles the club as it is already in terms of movement of what they can do. They can't get any more deals from sponsors because sponsors don't want to come to Man United. They want to pull out. They don't want to come. They want to pull out. Adidas want to renegotiate terms. TeamViewer don't want to stick around. So from a business perspective, they can't get any money out of Manchester United from this point now without getting outside interference or help. And via getting help, you either have somebody who wants to come in with you, like a Sir Jim or a minority investment group, or you have somebody who fully buys you out now. And what you've just said around the currency from dollar to pound and stuff like that, the way that the process has been run, any offer that you make it in dollars. Because when you do dollars and then you convert it via the headquarters of that Manchester United financially are based in the Cayman Islands, it's tax-free. Via doing it tax-free, you don't pay any tax on the price. The Rain Group take their select cut out of it for what they've done in terms of the process. The rest of the proceeds is distributed between the family and whatever percentage shares they have. And from there, the Glazer family's mantra is, we want $1 billion each. And $1 billion each, if I do the maths just off the top of my head, if somebody offered them £5.5 billion pounds, you would get around about $7 billion, which is over $1 billion of what they want. So really, if Sheikh Jassim has bid anywhere near, upwards of $7 billion, that is, and it equivalates roughly to just below £6 billion, the Glazer family are going to sell because they've got more than what they actually wanted. They're not going to be coming back to the UK anytime soon and using them British pounds, are they? They're going to convert them back to US dollars, where they're based in Tampa Bay in Florida. So at the end of the day, the way that they've run the process is they want dollars. They want to see what's going to impact them as individuals from where they're based and where they know. And like you say, set up the Cayman Islands, tax-free, wire the money through there. You get no tax via the US because it's coming from Cayman Islands, which due process and how law and finance works, unfortunately or fortunately for the Glazer family, they always find a way to get more money out of anything. And they've managed to come this far at this moment in time. So at the end of the day, the Glazer family's process around the pounds and dollars, via setting it up that they want bids to come in via dollars, they know what's going to impact them a lot better than if it was in pounds. And if I'm being honest, it probably saves them the hassle of having to translate the funds over from different currencies. Because when you're dealing with like £5, it's easy to do, but when you're dealing with billions of pounds, it's a lot harder to get the numbers bang on accurate for what people want. And as I say, the premium offer from Sheikh Jassim and the Qataris, if they want this big money and this big offer, they're going to take it now, because at the end of the day, you don't get this money. It doesn't come around every so often. It comes around really once in a generation. And if you're lucky to be in that generation, which the Glazer family have been, me and you, Dan, mate, we're never going to see £1 billion. Let's be honest. We'd be lucky. You might win a couple of lottery tickets or whatever, but at the end of the day, due process runs its course. And the Glazer family, they set the mantra, they set the process up. Put your bids in dollars. Let's see what hits our bank balances. And by doing so, you get tax-free as well, which is an added bonus for them.
Yeah. But I like you said, obviously, we'll never see £1 billion in our lifetime. That's like winning the lottery for me, to be honest. So, obviously, Ten Hag's, obviously, there's been reports that Ten Hag is very frustrated with the likes of the slow movement in transfers. Obviously, we're into players like Ramus Hodgland, Mason Mount, Kim Min-jae, all these players. And Ten Hag's growing frustrated with the lack of business that's being done at United already, because obviously he wants his players at the club before pre-season. So, do you think that Ten Hag already knows what's going on about who's going to be the new owner, do you think? Or do you think that Ten Hag is just generally frustrated because of the process of the sale, because it's now going to hold him back for what he can do while building at Manchester United? What do you think what do you think about that?
Between me, you, and every Manchester United fan that is out there, the only thing that I know personally is Manchester United have £100 million to spend. That's it. That in terms of if they weren't to sell anybody, £100 million, that's Erik ten Hag's budget. And the only way that he knows that is because Manchester United are on the red list for FFP. And if Manchester United weren't on that list, you know something? I think being on the red list for the FFP has helped Manchester United more, because they actually know what they can spend legally without breaking any charges, maybe like Manchester City have. But because they are on that red list, it limits them in terms of what they can spend. And as we've reiterated many times, the debt plays a factor in what you can spend. For example, if Sheikh Jassim was to be the preferred bidder, and his quota of "I'm coming in and I'm clearing out the debt," which if he was to be processed through, he would put in clauses where it is expected that he has to take the debt away from the football club. Not, I say it and then I go back on my word. No, I'm going to give Manchester United fans it legally in abiding contract that the debt goes away. And via doing that, if the debt went away from Manchester United, you can add another £50 million on. That's without player sales. So as you've said around, players like Mason Mount, for example, an offer of £40 million went into Chelsea, and they basically kicked out of Manchester United's hand, really, if I'm being honest with you, in terms of that bid. Kim Min-jae, as you've said, Erik ten Hag, he's given the list of players that he wants to the board and to John Murtough as the director of football. He's given the list, and, Erik ten Hag's much in the dark as Manchester United fans are. John Murtough is as much in the dark. He doesn't know if he has any added finances to then buy more players or to recruit more players. The only thing really right now that Manchester United can do is they can buy players on a budget. That's it, really. And their other clubs and their other rivals can spend £200 million and not worry about FFP, not worry about the breaches that they might incur. For example, Arsenal are preparing an offer of around £80 million plus £20 million in add-ons for Declan Rice. Like, that sort of offers around the corner. Manchester United can't do anything like that. They can't do anything because the finances don't constrain to what they want to do. So in terms of Erik ten Hag personally, as far as I'm aware, he's furious, as you said. He's furious around that the club have not given him any direction in terms of what he can do. The only thing he can do is, I give you my players, get me some of the ones that I actually want, get me a priority out of two priorities, and coming into the window, he had two priorities. Priority one was Mason Mount, and priority two priority one was Harry Kane, which they've now pulled away from the negotiations for because they don't believe Daniel Levy really wants to sell him. And the priority two in terms of a profile of player was Mason Mount. Those were the two that he wanted really at all costs. And now he's, the process in terms of bidding for Mason Mount. Well, they've opened that communication line with Chelsea to make a deal. But in terms of him personally, he's frustrated. He knows, and from what I know of Erik ten Hag is, he wants a number 9, he wants 2 midfielders, he wants a centre half, and if he could, he'd want a goalkeeper. But unfortunately, when you want so much, and it's not just about buying a player to play that position, it's about buying the right player. When you want the right player, and it's down to specifics and millimetres in terms of preference, because you don't get those sort of players very often in the market, getting Erik ten Hag everything that he wants is a struggle. And especially, for example, maybe like last summer with Frankie de Jong, if a player doesn't want to come, well, you've got an even more struggle, really. But ultimately and overall, Erik ten Hag's frustration is around that the club haven't given him any guidance at all around what is going on with the situation. He is in the dark just as much as Manchester United fans are around what is actually going on with the process. All he knows is the Glazer family are going to decide in due process whether they want to sell the football club fully to Sheikh Jassim, or they want to propose and go for one of Sir Jim Ratcliffe's proposals, which he's proposing different percentages. He's even got a 69% offer on the table, but obviously it's at a reduced figure that's nowhere near £6 billion. So the process is there. And look, the Glazer family, if they don't feel that the offers are there, they've got Champions League football. They can stay in for another year if they wanted. Pull the plug on the whole thing. And it might not go well with Manchester United fans, but they've not cared for what Manchester United thinks for 18 years. So what's another year going to matter to them? Nothing. But as we say with Ten Hag, the frustration is there.
Yeah. So just last question as well. So obviously you've mentioned that United have about 100 million to spend this summer. Currently, right now, who would you say are the most likely? I'd say give you two questions. One, who do you think is the most likely sign that we can make? And two, as you as a fan, if you've only got 100 million pounds, because let's say the Glazers might not even sell before the transfer window closes, so we might actually only have 100 million pounds to spend this summer. Yeah. So, what would you say are the players that you would bring in with 100 million pounds?
Me personally, I think in terms of the first signing, I think if they can negotiate with Chelsea want 70 million plus 10 million in add-ons. They basically want a whole package of 80 million pounds for a player who's on 1 year of the contract. And when you've basically just you were prepared to do that really for Harry Kane, and you've pulled away from Harry Kane at that offer, you're not going to do that for Mason Mount. They're completely two different priorities and profiles of players. So the Mason Mount sort of theory is either Chelsea are going to drop the valuation or Manchester United are going to walk away. They're not paying £70 million for a player with 1 year left on the contract. What they will do is they'll pay around 50-55, but that 50-55 could be 40 with add-ons, 45 with add-ons, 50 with add-ons. It depends on what sort of offer and structure they want. But they're not going to spend ridiculous money on a player that they believe has 1 year left in their contract and they could get for free next summer. But they know how much Mason Mount wants to come, as much as Erik ten Hag wants the player. Therefore, they're doing all they can to suit all parties. Themselves, Erik ten Hag, Chelsea, and Mason Mount as the player. So if I had to put a prediction on who I think the first signing would be, if they can negotiate with Chelsea down to a reasonable price, I think Mason Mount would be the first sort of sovereign signing. Now, onto my own personal opinion as a fan, really, I would say that £100 million isn't a lot that you can really do. I think you can get 2 players really for that. I think you could probably, if I'm being honest, Mason Mount, I think, will be a player that Manchester United will get if the price suits them. I think they could get him for 50. And I think you can get Rasmus Højlund. They're quoting around 60 million euros, which is around £50 million. But you can do 40, 45 with add-ons and bonuses. And he wants to come, apparently, around Rasmus Højlund from Atalanta. He's a player that he enjoys his time in Italy. He's a young player, but he wants to develop at the highest level. And he sees Manchester United as his, if you like, dream club. And I know we hear that a lot of the times around players like, oh, I support Man United, but then they end up joining Liverpool, or certain things like that. Like it just happened in football. But surrounding him, he's put steps in place where he now is... his agent, anyway, is the same agency as Erik ten Hag. in Cosvias in terms of agents. So there is links and methods around that. So for me, I think Mason Mount you could get, and I think you could get probably Rasmus Højlund personally.
Yeah.
But for me, I think I'd throw Taylor Nong to go and get Moses Caicedo for me if I was going to get any midfielder. I don't really think you need a Mason Mount profile. I think Caicedo next to Casemiro, and if Casemiro was to get sent off hypothetically, you've got a player who can slot in there who's just as stable and, if you like, as Graham Souness coined, steady Eddie. But ultimately, I would throw Taylor Nung to go and get Moses Caicedo. That's just me personally, but I think a lot from what I know anyway regarding the transfer policy for the summer, it's not so much around the takeover will impact the business Manchester United do. It's more a case of who they sell is going to impact what they can do this summer. So, for example, if you sold, people coin it as Deadwood. If you sold, I don't know what, I think if you could get in around 80 to 100 million pounds in player sales, like you could have probably a net profit of around, you could spend an extra 70, 80 million pounds, which really in today's market gets you maybe, well, in Manchester United's case, it gets you one player, but in maybe other clubs' cases, that gets you two or three. But I think it depends, because Manchester United have set their standards so high on the quality of the players. You have to you have to pay a premium to get quality. And Erik ten Hag, in terms of quality, he's if Manchester United didn't have FFP, in his mind he wanted three players, regardless of the price tags: Harry Kane, Declan Rice, and Mason Mount. That would have been his dream scenario. And like I say, if Manchester United was a debt-free football club with an owner that was willing to invest a bit here and there, and commercially United grew still over the years, that could happen every summer if it wanted to. And I'm not just speaking out of turn in saying that. Why do you think Manchester City, have built the team that they have, and they have basically two squads? They've built it and they've sustained it over 4 or 5 years, build a squad together, and then they go on and do something like the treble. It happens. So for me personally as a fan, I would throw everything to go and get Caicedo, but Manchester United want to be kept informed around what's happening with him. And I think if Rice goes to Arsenal, I think they'll struggle to get both. And I think really around any other players, well, Mason Mount wants to come to Manchester United, and he's made that pretty clear. And surrounding any other players, I mean, Højlund, I think, is a good striker in the short, in the long term. But I think we need two strikers. I think if you'd have bought Harry Kane and Højlund, like you're dreaming, really. I know we're saying that, but we are dreaming. You have an experienced one and then a younger one to go on for.
Yeah, I completely agree. Obviously, I've just left this comment on screen with Simon as well, saying, what position do you think the priority is for you both? For me, it's the striker. Tom, what do you think?
I'd go striker.
Yeah. So, but for me, obviously, I'll answer my own question considering what I asked you. Obviously, I would agree with you that with Mason Mount, that's probably the most realistic sign that we would make for our first signing. Obviously, it would be kind of a big sign. But it is a marquee player, you could say. And obviously, Mason Mount isn't the worst looking player, so he would look good in the new United shirt when United do promote and decide to release the kit. And I'd say that if it was down to me, on a budget, I'd definitely sign Kim Min-jae because I feel like that 42 million pounds, whatever it is, on that release clause is an absolute steal. People talk about McAllister going to Liverpool for 35 million is an absolute steal. I think Kim Min-jae is obviously, I think he's worth about 80 million pounds alone as a centre half at the moment. I think he's absolutely brilliant, especially what he's done for Napoli this season. So definitely I would go for Kim Min-jae. And I also would explore the free transfer market. Obviously, I'd say Højlund, like you said, with him being an upcoming young striker. But then I would definitely look at the likes of maybe Adrian Rabiot. I'd look at the likes of Marcus Thuram. These type of free agents that are decent players and have got European experience. So I feel like that if United have got a low budget of £100 million, obviously plus player sales, The only unfortunate thing with United this summer is that we're going to try and sell players like Harry Maguire and probably, I don't know, maybe Scott McTominay, for example. But no doubt teams will be wanting the likes of Lindelof or Wan-Bissaka, and they're going to be wanting players that we don't want to sell. I mean, look at James Garner at the start of this season. Yeah. Obviously, we were trying to offload players like Andres Pereira, which we ended up doing, and like other players and stuff like Wan-Bissaka at the time, and no one wanted him. But Everton came in for James Garner, and obviously he was the only player that we could actually generate money from, and that's why we ended up selling him. So that was the frustrating part, in my opinion, and that's where this summer could go wrong in my eyes. That we could sell players to actually, we could sell players to build our transfer budget up, but is it the right players are going? Is it the considered deadwood, as we call them? So for me, I definitely feel like that with what's going to happen this summer, it is going to be a tricky one. It is the way I review it. But anyway, that's been the show. Hello?
Hello, yeah, I'm here, yeah. You keep glitching out and everything. I think it's to do your internet or whatnot. But
my Wi-Fi's been dodgy. Yeah. So I was just saying that. Tell everyone where you can find them.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at TomJournalist1, and like you say, same thing with how Dan got in contact with me. DMs are always open for people if they want to have an update, or they just want to ask a question. I don't mind how left field it is, just so long as it's not a question around who showers the longest in Manchester United's changing room. I think we'll be fine in terms of a conversation. But yeah. No worries anyway from my end of things. And like I said at the start, guys, anybody who's watching either live or post stream, subscribe, like, share, as always, people. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Tom, thank you, guys. Oh, look at our friend just joined Red Devil Studio. He's just joined. Go watch the stream back, pal. It's been a really good stream. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. And Tom, obviously, a massive thank you to you as well. And obviously, as Red Devil Studio says, I really appreciate Tom coming on this evening. But anyway, thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you